The alien girl's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the chaos of the marketplace like a blade. "Trade your food for my teddy bear, human. My brother hasn't eaten in days." Marcus Vane had fought mercenary battles on half a dozen worlds, faced horrors no man should survive. But nothing in all the galaxy prepared him for that plea. In that moment, a choice stood before him. Walk away, like he always had. Or make a trade that would change not only their lives, but the fate of entire worlds. Hey everyone, before we dive into this powerful HFY story, hit that like button, subscribe if you love humanity's legend status in sci-fi, and share this video with a friend who needs a good story tonight. It helps more than you know, and trust me, you don't want to miss where this one is going. The marketplace of Meridian was alive in a way only frontier trade posts could be. Voices clashed together in a dozen alien tongues, haggling, cursing, laughing, calling out prices. The air was thick with the tang of spices, the sizzle of skewered meats over open flames, the sweetness of fruit so bright it stung the senses. Twin suns hammered down from above, making the metal walls of the station shimmer with heat. Through that chaos walked Marcus Vane, broad-shouldered, armor scuffed and scarred. Every line of him screamed battle-hardened. He moved with the steady pace of a man used to eyes on his back, his sand-colored plating catching flashes of sun with each step. Alien traders shifted aside without needing a word, as though some primal instinct told them this human had seen more wars than they cared to imagine. He wasn't here for trouble. Not today. His last mercenary contract had paid decently, and this was just a supply run. Food, ammo, maybe a few luxuries if he felt like it. Then back to his ship, back to the silence of space. That was the plan. And Marcus liked plans. But plans rarely survived contact with reality. He stopped at a food stall, eyeing skewers of roasted meat that hissed over a bed of glowing coals. The vendor, a reptilian draconian with scales that gleamed like polished bronze, leaned forward eagerly. "Finest cuts from the highlands, human," the merchant hissed. "Protein strong, make you fight like draconian warrior." Marcus studied him with the cool calm of a man used to bargaining. "How much?" 20 credits? Marcus raised one scarred eyebrow. The vendor flinched. 15, with spice packet, final offer. A nod, a quick transfer of credits, and Marcus bit into the meat. Tender. Better than expected. He chewed slowly, savoring the rare moment of simple taste. And then he noticed them. At first, he thought they were shadows. But no. Two small figures sat pressed against the wall of a weathered building, half hidden from the noise of the market. Children. Alien children. Their skin was a soft azure blue that seemed almost luminous against the dull gray metal behind them. The girl sat upright, her back stiff, long braids falling over her thin shoulders. In her small hand, she clutched something. At first glance a rag, then a closer look revealed it as a worn plush toy, a teddy bear so patched and faded, it was hard to tell what animal it had once been. Beside her leaned a boy, much smaller, his head resting against her arm. His clothes hung loose on his tiny frame, and even at this distance Marcus could see how hollow his cheeks were. He'd seen poverty on 100 worlds, children left behind, orphans scraping by on streets where law and mercy rarely reached. It was always tragic, always brutal, but it was also constant, and constants were things mercenaries learned to walk past. The universe was cruel. One man couldn't change that. Marcus took another bite of his food, ready to turn away. But something in him hesitated. Maybe it was the way the girl's eyes lifted as though she could feel his stare, wide, turquoise eyes that shimmered with a mix of fear and stubborn defiance. Maybe it was the way her small hand tightened around that bear, as if holding on to the last piece of a world that had already been ripped away. And then she spoke. Her voice was so faint it almost vanished beneath the clamor of the crowd. But Marcus heard it. He would never forget it. "Trade your food for my teddy bear, human," she whispered. "My brother hasn't eaten in days." Marcus stopped mid-chew. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered the skewer. He crossed the market in long strides, armored boots thudding against the metal ground until he crouched down in front of her. The boy's wide eyes flickered up at him, glassy with hunger. The girl kept her chin raised, though her hands trembled as she held out the stuffed toy, its seams coming loose. Up close, Marcus could see how gaunt they were. The boy's ribs pressed through his thin shirt. The girl's braids looked hastily done, like she'd tied them herself. They had the look of children who had been holding on too long without help. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, his voice quieter than usual, almost gentle. The girl swallowed hard. "Leah, this is Taro. Where are your parents?" Her eyes dropped. "Gone. The fever took them last season." Marcus let the silence hang for a moment. He'd lost comrades to disease more often than he cared to count. On backwater worlds like this, medical care was a luxury only the rich could afford. He handed her the skewer without another word. Leah's eyes widened. Her hand shook as she reached out, but she stopped short. "No," she said firmly. "You're food for the bear. Fair trade." Marcus blinked at her. Even starving, she was bargaining. Even starving, she clung to dignity. "Keep the bear," he said. "It's worth more than food." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but at last she accepted, breaking the skewer in half and handing the larger piece to her little brother. Taro tore into it hungrily, dropping his pacifier with a clatter, chewing as though it were the only meal he'd ever known. Marcus watched in silence, a strange twist tightening in his chest. He'd told himself he was done with caring, done with saving people. That was someone else's burden. And yet, here he was. As Leah fed her brother, she looked up at Marcus with cautious suspicion. "Why?" Marcus didn't answer. Not yet. All he knew was that a mercenary plan had just been broken by a whisper from a child, and what came next would change everything. The skewer was gone in minutes. Taro devoured it until nothing but the wooden stick remained, then licked his fingers with the single-minded hunger of a child who hadn't eaten in too long. Leah gave him her portion too, chewing on nothing but air while pretending she wasn't hungry. Marcus noticed, he always noticed. He could have walked away then. He told himself that. The galaxy had no shortage of hungry children. He wasn't their savior. He wasn't anyone's savior. And yet, his boots stayed rooted to the ground. "More than just one meal," Marcus heard himself say. The words surprised even him. Leah's turquoise eyes narrowed, distrustful, protective, the kind of look a child wore when she had been forced to grow up too soon. "Why would you help us?" she asked, voice sharp, despite its tremor. Marcus considered the question. The honest answer? He didn't know. Maybe it was a memory of a child from long ago, one he hadn't been able to save. Maybe it was just that he was tired of walking past suffering as though it wasn't his problem. "Because I can," he said finally, "and because no one else will." Leah studied him for a long moment, her brother's hand clutched tight in hers. Then she stood, pulling Taro to his feet. Her thin shoulders squared with a defiance that almost made Marcus smile. "If you trick us, I'll stab you while you sleep." Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "I believe you would." They left the marketplace together, a human mercenary leading two alien children through the murmuring stares of merchants and shoppers. Eyes followed them, suspicion and curiosity mingling. A man like Marcus was already an unusual sight. A man like Marcus walking with starving Azuran children? That was gossip for days, but he ignored them. He had somewhere in mind. The further they walked, the thinner the crowds became. The noisy marketplace gave way to quieter streets where the stalls turned into modest clay dwellings covered in creeping vines. Gardens dotted the landscape, fragrant herbs growing in small patches of soil. A softer, calmer air hung here, away from the chaos of trade. Leah kept her brother close, her eyes darting constantly, scanning for threats. Even as a child, she had the instincts of someone who'd learned the world couldn't be trusted. Marcus recognized it. He'd lived with the same instincts his entire life. Finally, he stopped before a dome-shaped home built of clay-like material. its curved walls painted by streaks of sunlight through silver-leafed trees. Unlike the metal structures of the city, this house looked alive, peaceful, almost sacred. "Who lives here?" Leah asked, her voice guarded. "An old friend," Marcus said, unconsciously touching the scar on his forearm. "She saved my life once. A healer. Her name's Azara." Leah tilted her head, suspicious. "She's Azuran?" Marcus nodded. "Like you, but different. She helps anyone who needs it. Doesn't matter what species." As if on cue, the door opened before they could knock. Standing in the doorway was an elderly Azuran woman. Her skin was pale blue, lined with the map of years, and her silver hair was braided in intricate patterns across her head. But her eyes were bright, sharp, alive. "Marcus Vane," she said warmly, though surprise tinged her voice. "I thought you'd forgotten this old woman." "Never, Azara." For once, Marcus smiled, the hard lines of his face softening. Her gaze shifted to the children, and concern clouded her features. "And who are these little ones?" Before Marcus could answer, the sound of boots crunching gravel echoed down the path. Two figures approached, uniforms dark green, their movements precise. Marcus tensed instantly, his hand drifting toward the blaster at his hip. Meridian Security Force. The taller one, a reptilian with scales that shimmered crimson in the sunlight, called out, "Healer Azara. By order of the Galactic Medical Authority, your practice is to be shut down immediately. All unlicensed remedies will be confiscated." Azara stepped forward, her spine straight, her voice steady despite her age. "On what grounds?" "Practicing medicine without certification," the reptilian snapped. The second officer, a four-armed humanoid, added coldly, "The law is the law. Imperial regulation requires all healers to be certified. Fines are due. Remedies restricted." Marcus narrowed his eyes. He knew this script. Regulations that had nothing to do with safety and everything to do with control. Azara's chin lifted. "Your approved medications cost 10 times more than what people here can afford. Without me, they will have nothing." "That is not our concern," the officer sneered. Marcus stepped forward, placing himself just slightly in front of Azara and the children. "Is there a problem here?" His voice carried the weight of a man who was very used to ending problems. The reptilian officer turned, sizing him up. "This doesn't concern you, human. Move along." Marcus's lips curved into the faintest smirk. "Actually, it does. I'm a patient. Imperial Code Section 47B allows for ongoing treatment during certification disputes, doesn't it?" The officers exchanged a quick glance. They hadn't expected him to know the law. The four-armed one grudgingly muttered, "That's correct. But only for existing patients." "These children are also patients," Azara said quickly, her voice unwavering. She placed a gentle hand on Taro's shoulder. "The boy has a respiratory condition. He requires ongoing care." As if on cue, Taro coughed softly, the sound weak but real. Leah's hand clutched his tighter. The reptilian's scales darkened with frustration. He jabbed a claw toward Azara. "Fine. 1 week. You obtain certification, or we shut this place down permanently. No new patients, no excuses." With that, the two officers turned and marched back down the path, their shadows stretching long across the ground. The silence they left behind was heavy. Azara exhaled slowly, her shoulders sagging as she looked at Marcus. "Thank you. You bought us time, but only a little." Marcus glanced at Leah and Taro, then back at Azara's lined but resolute face. He had come here with no plan beyond food and supplies. Now he was standing in the doorway of an old friend, staring at two orphans, and realizing the galaxy had just handed him something he couldn't ignore. For the first time in years, Marcus felt the flicker of something he thought he'd lost long ago. Purpose. And purpose was far more dangerous than any weapon.